There are claims of evidence to support the notion that several presidents have known about UFOs and have participated in covering up information. Grant Cameron has been researching this very topic for more than 30 years now. Now Grant investigates with open minds what past presidents may have known and did not inform the public. According to Grant, it starts with FDR.
And this first started with the overflight of an unknown object in Los Angeles in 1942. There is documents in the Roosevelt library that do show that the president was contacted by the people on the scene, and he basically asked who's in charge. I did an interview with two women who stated that their father and his cousin, who was Cordell Hull, who was the longest serving Secretary of State in U.S. history, had been Secretary of State for Roosevelt, had taken him in a sub-basement under the Capitol and had shown him 3 bodies and a craft.
Supposedly, it's a memo from President Truman to Secretary of Defense Forrestal, authorizing a group called Majestic 12. Doesn't say what it's about. It's a secret memo.
Majestic 12, or MJ-12, was the code name given to a secret committee whose alleged purpose was to investigate UFO activity.
I think it's a document that has been changed. I think the problem that they have is you cannot release a legitimate document. You have to protect the cover-up at all costs. I think there is an MJ-12. We had somebody who I am absolutely certain knew what was going on. We talked to him. It was Dr. Eric Walker, who was the former president at Penn State University. He said, I've known of them for 40 years, which was put back to 1947. Leave it alone. There's nothing you can do about it. Go research something else. Truman had one particular public statement, which was when he was asked, have you discussed flying saucers with the military?
Oh yes, we discussed it at every conference that we had with the military. There's always things like that going on. Flying saucers, and we've had other things, you know.
And he said, yes, we've discussed it with the Joint Chiefs of Staff on a number of occasions. A lot of his information was coming from his air aide, who was General Landry. And General Landry came into the Truman administration in, I believe, February of 1948. And Landry stated that he briefed the president on flying saucers. They didn't call them UFOs until 1952, on flying saucers, and he got his material from the CIA, and that he would brief the president orally every 3 months. In February of 1954, Eisenhower went to Palm Springs, and at one point he disappeared. A New York newspaper was about to put on the wire that the president had died of a heart attack. And Haggerty, who was the press secretary, came racing back, held a news conference late in the evening and said, the president is not dead. The president broke a tooth eating chicken at supper time.
The cover story was he was going to the dentist, that he met with the extraterrestrials, that he wanted offensive weaponry in return for, you know, whatever they wanted.
The story is always that he met with aliens, and that was a story that was being put out by UFO groups just after it happened. There's no way to substantiate what actually happened, but there does seem to be a fair bit of backup to the fact that the president did disappear.
While searching for evidence related to the Majestic 12, nuclear physicist, author, and UFO researcher Stanton Friedman uncovered a letter from Dr. Donald H. Menzel, a supposed member of MJ-12, to President John F. Kennedy.
What's the connection between John Kennedy and Donald Menzel? There's a letter from Menzel to Kennedy saying, I may be able to help you in one area particularly. I've had a longer continuous association with the National Security Agency. These are the spy guys listening in on everything. More than 30 years as of 1960. Longer association than anybody in the country, probably. When we are properly cleared to each other, I can tell you more.
Another document also linked to MJ-12 that hints at Kennedy's knowledge of UFOs is a supposed CIA memo concerning Marilyn Monroe.
I happen to believe that that's a legitimate document. I think it's real. And it describes her knowledge of the UFO phenomenon through JFK, and describing her as a security liability as well, because she started to talk a little too much.
What I was able to determine based upon my research, completely independent of that, is that Kennedy was not interested in space. He had really no interest in space. There is actually an audio clip at the Kennedy Library where he says this. He just wants to beat the Russians to the moon. He doesn't care about space. A very short presidency, and I don't think he really knew much. His brother, Robert Kennedy, was very interested in UFOs. The problem with the Kennedy thing was that he was a Democrat. And one of the rumored stories in ufology about presidents is that the Democrats are not told and the Republicans are, that they're briefed more, they're given more information. Of course, Kennedy was a Democrat, not pro-war, so the question is, would they brief a Democrat or give a Democrat inside knowledge as to what's going on? I kind of doubt it.
Well known for his belief in UFOs, President Jimmy Carter has often been referred to as the UFO president. Carter publicly claimed to have had a UFO sighting prior to becoming president. Also, on at least one occasion while campaigning for president, Carter declared that if elected, he would make every piece of information this country has about UFO sightings available to the public and scientists.
I think Carter should be given more credit for what he did than he really is getting credit for. Carter stated that he would release all the information, but he did also state, if it were classified, that I wouldn't release. And I think that's basically what happened, was that he was cut off at the pass, that it was explained to him as being classified and you can't touch it. And if you take a look back, no president releases secrets on anything, whether it's UFOs or anything else. The president has to keep his mouth shut. The Carter did, a vast majority of the documents that we have came under the Carter administration. The FBI documents, the CIA documents, the Navy documents, there was thousands and thousands of pages.
What happened to the UFO issue?
What happened to
The UFO issue.
I don't really know what happened to it. I saw one, but I don't know what, it just disappeared.
The problem with it was that when Carter came in, he got himself into a lot of trouble in that he cut the CIA. And he also cut NASA's budget by, I believe, $5 billion a year. So then he turns around and his science advisor goes to NASA and tries to get NASA to start a new UFO investigation. We know from, for example, his press secretary, who was Jody Powell, was pressuring the FBI for their UFO stuff. So we do know that people inside the Carter administration were pushing various agencies to come clean on the UFO subject.
Ronald Reagan, the 40th President of the United States, was quite interested in the UFO topic.
He actually had 3 sightings. One of the sightings was with the pilot. The pilot actually confirmed, yes, that it happened. They were flying along, saw a light, and Reagan said, let's chase it, and they took off after this object. The second one was when he was governor, and I believe he was coming from Sacramento down the coast, and he and Nancy were in the car, and this object appeared, and he got out, and they were late to the party. They watched this object or whatever. They got late to the party. Now, 2 of the people that were in the party who confirmed this story, and one was Steve Allen, a comedian who told the story, and he was very skeptical of UFOs. He told the story that Reagan had said it. And the other one that told the story was Lucille Ball, and she told it in her book, and she recounted how Reagan was very excited, and he was talking about this, and she said, after that event, every time I saw him as president, I think back to this guy who saw the UFO. And the third one, Merv Griffin just recently died. He wrote a book, and in his book, he describes another incident that Reagan talked to him about, another sighting. So Reagan had a number of sightings, was very interested in the UFO phenomena.
Ronald Reagan's fascination with UFOs continued in the White House. Steven Spielberg came to the White House to screen his film E.T. for the president.
And there was 37 people in the room. One was the vice president, George Bush. A number of high-ranking people were in the room. There was 37 people, and near the end of the movie, according to Steven Spielberg, Ronald Reagan leaned over and he said, you know, I bet you there aren't 6 people in this whole room who know how true this whole thing is. And Spielberg was taken back by this. He was actually shocked. Now, Steven Spielberg has gone on the record a number of times about UFOs. He gets asked about it quite a bit. He has stated that he has met with a number of presidents and he has asked them about UFOs. And according to Steven Spielberg, none of them claim to have any inside information. And Colin Powell, on the record to a presidential biographer, stated that one of his jobs was to keep the little green remarks out of Reagan's speeches. And he said that he'd be in a cabinet meeting and Reagan would start talking about aliens and he'd roll up his eyes and say, oh, here we go with the little green man again.
Reagan also created the Strategic Defense Initiative, a program the press quickly named Star Wars. This initiative called for the development of space-based laser defense systems, and the reason given was to protect the U.S. from nuclear ballistic missiles. But some believe that the true purpose for the Strategic Defense Initiative was to defend against alien invasion. President Bill Clinton was surrounded by the UFO topic during his administration's tenure in the White House.
In later years, Bill Clinton would bring up the alien invasion remark when he was under attack at one point with the Monica Lewinsky thing, and then he was under attack for some education thing. He was talking to a bunch of teachers, and he comes up with, you know, if we were under alien attack, this wouldn't be so significant. So he had studied UFO history, he knew about the alien invasion remark, and he used it in his speeches a couple of times.
Documents secured through Freedom of Information Act requests contain details from the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy relating to Lawrence Rockefeller's UFO Disclosure Initiative, set up by Rockefeller to obtain declassification of all UFO files held by the United States government. While visiting Lawrence Rockefeller's ranch, the president's wife, Hillary Clinton, was photographed holding a book, which was later discovered to be Are We Alone? Philosophical Implications of the Discovery of Extraterrestrial Life, showing her possible interest in the subject.
Hillary Clinton, when she was running for president in Iowa, mentions the alien invasion, and she mentions this hypothetical how the world would come together in a speech, and it was not picked up by the media, but the audio is there of Hillary addressing the alien invasion while she was running for president.
John Podesta, President Clinton's chief of staff, has also been an advocate for having the government release information related to UFOs. Podesta even recently wrote the foreword for a new book entitled UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record.
He's a very smart guy. He was known as the X-Files man at the Clinton White House. Whether he talked to Clinton about UFOs, really not known. But he had this interest in the phenomenon and didn't deny it. When Clinton got out, John Podesta sort of became famous because he went at the National Press Club and talked about the fact that he thought UFOs should be disclosed.
UFO researchers have become more vocal in recent years regarding their desire for governments to release information to the public concerning UFOs and extraterrestrial life. Other countries like Canada and the UK have recently released previously classified documents relating to UFOs. Many of those who are hopeful that the US government will disclose this information look for some sort of announcement from the president. And because of his push for transparency, many believe Barack Obama to be the president who will bring about disclosure. One of the initial reasons for this belief was UFO disclosure advocate John Podesta, who served as the leader of Obama's transition team.
So now he's a liability to Obama. And if you take a look at the statements that he's had made since, they've been very bland, very nonchalant. He's not really pushing too hard anymore, because anything he says, for example, if he says, I think there's a cover-up and they should disclose UFOs, suddenly Obama has to answer for it, because he's always seen to be in league with Obama. So you can't embarrass the president. You got to sort of stay clear, and that's what he's doing now. And he has made some statements in terms of Will Allen, who's a guy in Washington who knows Obama, has made the statement that he went to Obama and told Obama we need disclosure, and it showed him photographs he had taken, and Podesta had basically said, no, this would destabilize society.
Jeff Peckman, an American UFO disclosure activist, successfully managed to get an initiative on the Denver ballot to create a committee responsible for preparing people for extraterrestrial contact. He considered Barack Obama when timing the push for his initiative.
His team, there are many people on his transition team that were publicly had made public statements being very favorable to disclosure. It just was very clear that the direction things were going were not towards open disclosure. Even though it was early in his campaign, it was somewhat of an intuitive thing. I thought, well, I don't think I want to take the chance, based on what I've seen, that this is going to happen in the Obama administration anytime soon.
The initiative only received a little over 17% of the yes vote in the November 2010 elections. If people are really concerned about disclosure, more effort is required to make their voice heard. Grant's research has indicated that the current president really has no interest in the topic at all. Grant also believes that if we truly are after disclosure, looking to the president is really looking in the wrong direction.
Obama's interest is in healthcare, in poverty, and education. That's his thing. And he's always talked about this. And he has no interest in outer space. Even Bill Clinton stood up and said, if you're interested in outer space, you should be voting for Hillary. I've been working on this for a number of years now. And I've bounced back and forth. The president knows, the president doesn't know. My statement right now would be based upon a quote, and I can't really say where it's coming from right now, but it's, I think, pretty accurate. The presidents cannot be players. We tell them what they need to know.